So I was doing the keynote or the fireside chat also with Liz yesterday, talking about eBPF, and I've been using Cilium since 2018, I think. So
Hmm.
then we did a poll, and like 75% of the audience said this is the first time they've heard of eBPF. I'm like, how could that?
Wow.
Well, of course, we have so many things coming out. We have so many new technologies and stuff. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Well, at least I hear about it now. And I
Yep.
was thinking about the little bit about the same thing with Talos, that I've been using it for a year and a half, I think, already. And we did a podcast about it. We released in September last year, and I've actually had some of your team helping me out on a customer case already. And it's like, okay, Talos is just one of those normal things, but maybe not
Right.
for everybody. And there might be somebody, I'm going to lean in and speak really just to Kale, who was standing in the background of the picture a minute ago, who hasn't listened to the podcast, and you should feel ashamed. But for everybody else who has good reasons to not listen to the podcast yet or hasn't heard, can you tell us quickly what's Talos?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Talos, first of all, just to step back a little bit, I was an operations engineer, still am to some degree, but when you become CTO, you become watered down a little bit. Um, but I was personally handling a very big effort to move a large percentage of our traffic into Kubernetes. And at the time, this was Kubernetes 1.8, so it was still relatively young. Not a lot of people knew how to use Kubernetes. I'd argue still today people don't really know how to use Kubernetes. And so I found that building this all from the bottom up was a lot of work. I had to manage the operating system, I had to manage Kubernetes. And then for everything that you do within the operating system, there's a parallel within Kubernetes. So securing the API or SSH or you know coming up with permissions for users, user management, stuff like that. So it almost felt like duplicate work. I felt like both could be handled by a team in and of themselves. There could be one team who just handles managing Linux and another team who manages handling Kubernetes. And so Talos Linux was born out of a need to eliminate one or the other. And obviously, I couldn't eliminate Kubernetes because that's what I ultimately wanted. And so Talos Linux today is a very, very slimmed down Linux distribution that is specifically built for running Kubernetes. So we've gone to some pretty big extremes here. There's no bash, there's no SSH. It's a gRPC API that's mutual TLS encrypted. It's completely read-only. It's a squash FS that runs in RAM. It's very, very minimal. I mean, when I first built Talos, the first POC version of it, it was literally just the kubelet, and that wasn't very, very practical. So I introduced this API to be able to manage it because at the end of the day, I wanted humans off of the box, and I wanted the operating system to be basically non-existent or as close to non-existent as possible. And the
Hmm.
only way that I felt you could do that is by removing humans and by making it as secure as possible. And so it's got things like a hardened kernel. It's a KSPP hardened. Um, Kubernetes itself is actually hardened. We go and we say, okay, Kubernetes comes out of the box pretty insecure, but with Talos Linux, we're going to go through all of the options to make it secure out of the box. So it's a Linux distribution that is hyper focused on Kubernetes and security that is meant to be no OS at the end of the day, if that makes sense.
Okay. So you said it's a Linux distribution made for Kubernetes. So then I put that in and put Kubernetes on top of it.
So that's a good question. That's where it's kind of strange, right? Because Talos Linux almost is a Kubernetes distribution as well.
Hmm.
There's a very blurry line between the two because at the end of the day, like I said, I just want Kubernetes. But we just deploy vanilla Kubernetes. That's the difference between our quote unquote distribution and others. There's actually no distribution really about it other than the fact that we take vanilla upstream Kubernetes and just deploy it by default for you in a secure fashion. So Talos in other words, Talos has operational knowledge on how to run Kubernetes, how to stand it up, how to upgrade it, how to manage etcd, and it provides APIs by which you can more easily manage those things. So in some sense, it's also a Kubernetes distribution.
Okay. All right. Obviously, I knew that, but I wanted to get it out of you.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's a little early for me, so I need any
Yeah,
help
yeah.
I can get.
I'll help you out. I sometimes get asked, so is it a Linux distribution or is it Kubernetes? And I just answer yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right. And you said you stripped out stuff like SSH, but then when I really have a problem and I really need to do something more than the basic things, how do I get into
Mhm.
the box and do those things?
Well, that's the point. We don't want you in the box necessarily, right? If you really think about the things that you need when you SSH, it's not that, and I'm sure some people will disagree with me here because they've been using Linux for 30 plus years and they love their Unix utilities, which is fine. But it's not that we really need to go in and run ls, and it's not really that we need to run top or all of these more traditional commands. We want the information that they give us. And so instead of giving you access to get onto the host, we just provide an API that gives you similar functionality. So there's a list command, there's a list API, there's a read API that's like a cat. We even try to alias them so that it feels more Unixy. Um, we just recently landed a feature in the API to do packet inspection, so everything that you can more traditionally do with more traditional tools, we actually expose over an API instead, so that you're nice and comfy on your couch and on your computer, but not actually, well, SSH, you could argue not physically on it as well, but let's
Mm,
just for the sake of argument say that it is equivalent. You're not physically on the box to any degree, right? You're just getting information. And so you debug that way instead.
right. So then we still are able to run what commands we need and check the logs and stuff like that. We just do it via a REST based or a gRPC based API instead of an SSH/bash API.
Right. Exactly. It's this idea that I've been advocating for a while where I think at least server side Linux needs structured communication. Like if you look at the old Unix way, the idea was to have, and I'm sure you all know this, is to have very, very small programs that do very, very targeted things, and you can use the pipe to kind of bring everything. That's why you see things like awk and grep and sed all being used in one command, cat,
Mhm.
echo. But there's no structured communication between those processes. And so with Talos Linux, we wanted to put everything to be structured. So even PID1, there is no system D. Even PID1 is built from the bottom up in Go and built off this controller operator pattern. And every single thing within Talos Linux communicates over a very well-defined structured API. And it's not loosely defined like you're saying, bash and all of
Mm,
these commands. It's more machine friendly, if you will.
okay. So is it fair to say that Talos Linux gives me the ability to treat virtual machines and even bare metal with the same kind of mentality as I would normally treat containers?
Yeah, actually, that's another way. There's so many ways to market Talos Linux and to describe it. And if you just look at our the way that we've implemented upgrades, for example, what we do is since Talos is running in memory and we have everything underneath it that is more or less persisted, like Grub and Kubernetes and whatnot. Talos actually on an upgrade blows away all of that, and it tries to give you a brand new machine as if it was like Kubernetes rolling out a brand new pod. So it tries to bring the container experience that we're used to or that we want to use with Kubernetes to the operating system itself as well, so that your infrastructure is uniform from the bottom up and it's very easy to reason about.
Okay, this sounds quite interesting, but you've basically kind of rewritten an operating system and a way to manage servers and whatnot inside a Kubernetes cluster. How stable is this? Is it used anywhere? Is this something I can really count on for production?
Oh yeah. So I started Talos about 7 years ago, and I didn't realize how much work it would be to actually, build a brand new pig one and a whole, even our the build chain of Talos Linux is built completely from scratch. It's entirely from containers, and it's completely reproducible to be secure, so you can predict the SHA of Talos Linux and be sure that you're going to run that version. And we've been at this for, it was a lot of work. All that to say that even about 3 years ago, we've had a very large customer, and they were just went public about it at our first event, TalosCon. I'll shamelessly plug it. We just had that a few days ago, and Nokia has finally announced to the world that they've been using us for about 3 years now, and they are running one of the largest private clouds. They have 700,000 plus cores in their data centers, and Talos has been. I ask them like every other month, hey, how is Talos working? No outages due to Talos yet, nothing like that. It's lived up to the promise for them. There's plenty of other folks that are using it. Tremor Video is using it. People that I can't say, obviously. I'm just speaking on the ones that
It's
recently
just between
were
you and
public
me.
about it.
It's fine.
Yeah, right. But it is definitely, we went 1.0, which to me, I mean, I would argue that that's a superficial thing, but we went 1.0 about a year ago. So yeah, Talos is, man, it's built for this, right? It's built to be, it's kind of this argument of like the ideal code is no code. And we try to get down to no code as close as we can. And that just kind of inherently has this stable feature about it, like it's really hard to make it not work. But of course, it's software at the end of the day. But yes,
Okay.
it is definitely production ready.
Yep. And then I'm going to ask you next about how we get it on the servers, how we install it. And I can think of about 3 different methods come immediately to mind. But before we get to that, Anders asked, what are the pain points of using Kubernetes over Talos Linux? And I'm going to ask Anders, please clarify, what do you mean by using Kubernetes over Talos Linux? Do you mean what are the pain points of using Kubernetes when it's Talos Linux is the Kubernetes, or I am not clear on what you're asking. So if you can follow up a little bit on what you're asking, we'll get back to it. So how do I get it onto a server? What I guess the typical way is like I put some media in there and boot up from
Yeah.
something, or
Well, it depends. So to your point earlier, Talos Linux, running more or less the same and getting this container experience. It's on VMs or bare metal. It also works just as well in the cloud. And in fact, all of our release assets are the same exact version of Talos, same like bit for bit, but they just have a slightly different grub argument, so that it tells Talos, hey, you're running in AWS or you're running in GCP. So if you're in a cloud, they typically have a way for you to upload an image, and then, in AWS, for example, you can spin up an EC2 instance based off of that image, or an AMI in AWS's case. Similar things with Vultr and GCP. In bare metal, you have other options. You can Pixie boot it, or you can run the ISO. In VMware, we have a VMware image as well, or you can boot the ISO there as well. And the beautiful thing about it is Talos knows to look for its configuration, because I don't think we've actually touched on this yet, but it's purely driven via configuration, just like Kubernetes. You can feed the configuration to Talos over the user data of a cloud, for example, or you can tell Talos, here's an HTTPS endpoint that I want you to pull user data from. Or if you don't want that as well, Talos will by default, when it has no way of knowing where to get its configuration from. It knows that it hasn't been installed yet. It will sit in what we call maintenance mode, and it will just say, hey, I'm waiting for someone to give me a configuration. And so you can feed the initial configuration to Talos over the API. The API has a very limited set of APIs exposed within that mode so that you can push the configuration to it. So it's simple enough to boot up practically anywhere.
Okay. Anders gave a little bit more feedback. He says, what are the pain points with using Kubernetes on Talos opposed to Kubernetes on more conventional distributions like Ubuntu?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And this is a common concern about using Talos Linux, I would say. People start to wonder, oh, how can I run this? How can I run that? And what you have to start to think about is, first of all, you got to start looking at Kubernetes as your package manager. So if you need to run something on every machine, there's a construct for that within Kubernetes. It's a daemon set. And so that's, I would say, one of the pain points is more conceptually getting over the fact that you can't do anything on the host and trying to ask yourself, what can I do? How can I do this with Kubernetes instead? I would say the second thing is, in that same vein, is just, teaching Linux admins to use the Talos API. There is a learning curve, to be fair, and that's expected when you're taking away the entire tool set that someone traditionally knows. So I'd say that that's a very, very close second. And then I think the third thing is you're going to find very quickly, and I know we're talking about security here, you're going to find very, very quickly that a lot of the arbitrary workloads that we just throw under Kubernetes clusters today actually are pretty invasive. They do some very scary things, in my opinion. They actually run as privileged, and they NS enter into the PID1 namespace. In some cases, they'll even try to apt install or yum install. They try to discover which operating system they're running on to run the right package manager command. This is very common within CSIs, for example. So I think you'll find quickly too that there are some workloads that you may have loved, but you will not love on Talos because the developers made it with all of these assumptions that you can do some very scary things from a security point of view and break out of the container and do some things on the host. I wouldn't say that's widespread, but it is common enough to where, I warn people about that. And
Yeah.
I think that's a benefit of Talos, really, is exposing all of the workloads that might be doing some things that you don't want it to, if we're talking about security, right?
Yeah. I know that there's another open source project called Sidero Metal, which will help us install stuff. And I'm just going to say really shortly, it's fantastic. It's a way to kind of automate using this PXE boot to get servers up in your data center, and it's great. And I'm going to put a pin in that for now. We can come back to that later if we want to, because I really want to talk about the next thing, which we can start demoing maybe, because I think it's really cool. Do you have any other solutions for deploying stuff easily and in lots of data centers and whatnot that might have been something I could beta test a few months ago and got announced a few days ago?
Wow, it's almost like you know what I'm about to say. Yes. Yes, actually, we've been hard at work for almost a year now at a new product called Omni. We, as you mentioned, we previously and still do and still will have Sidero Metal, which is a way to manage Talos specifically using Cappy and on bare metal. But with Omni, we wanted something that worked regardless of where you're running Talos. In the same way that we wanted Talos Linux to work, whether it's cloud, bare metal, and we wanted the management experience of Kubernetes to be the same regardless if it's Raspberry Pis. We wanted to extend that philosophy up to a proper management solution that is then in charge of managing multiple Talos-based Kubernetes clusters. So Omni is what that is. It's at the moment it's a SaaS. You can also run it yourself, but it's really, really cool. And the way it works is, since we can leverage Talos Linux, we can use APIs from very, very early on in the boot process. What happens is, and we'll probably see this in the demo, you simply boot up Talos with some kernel parameters that teach it where your instance of Omni is, and a token that allows it to join. And very early on in the boot process of Talos Linux, it knows to establish a secure WireGuard connection to Omni. And so what this means in the case of edge, for example, or data centers or on-prem, where more typically you have very strict internet requirements, thanks to WireGuard, the only thing that these machines need to do is reach out on port 443 and a WireGuard port in order to establish a connection where we can then use the Talos APIs before Talos even has any configuration. We can actually secure the API and try to figure out where is this machine running, how much memory does it have, so on and so forth. So yeah, Omni was announced a few days ago, and it's our management solution for Talos Linux.
So I can take some installation media, say an ISO, somehow get it into my edge device, boot it up. It will create a WireGuard connection back to some server which is encoded in the ISO, set up the WireGuard connection, boot from that, download what it needs, and boot up as a Kubernetes node. Or as a
Yes, very, very
Talos node first. Yeah.
boot up as a Talos node. Yeah, while it's in maintenance mode, we'll do an upgrade of Talos to get it actually installed onto a machine so that it's the version that you want. The media that you use to kind of bootstrap it is just a way. It's Talos at the end of the day, but it's just a way to establish that initial connection. And then from there, our idea with Omni is, hey, just bring your own machines and we'll manage the rest for you.
Okay. Cool. Sounds too good to be true.
Yeah, sometimes the demos are hard to believe and they feel contrived, but at TalosCon we did something cool, and I'm pretty sure we'll do something cool here too.
Yeah. Should we do that?
Yeah, I will do that. Let's
All
see.
right.
So this is the homepage of Omni. When you first log in, you'll be presented with a way to download installation media, as we call it. And what I've done is I've downloaded an ISO, and all this is vanilla Talos with some special grub options that have this join token, this WireGuard endpoint, and this API endpoint. And that's baked into the grub config so that very early on, Talos knows, okay, I need to establish a connection. What I've done is I've gone ahead, because I want to save the boring details of uploading the ISO into our Vultr account here. But what I'll do here now is, now that I have an ISO based off of that, I'm going to create some servers here. And Andy, while I do that, I don't know, are we still planning on adding some other ones, or?
I will add some. I'm going to add 3 AWS nodes. I'll start that right now. And then I'm also
Cool.
going to add again my desktop, which is not in a closet.
Nice. So
Okay.
I'm gonna add 3 of them just to. I'll make mine the control plane nodes or something, because we'll go from there, and I'll give them some decent. That should be plenty. So let me deploy this. So what we're doing is I'm telling Vultr to boot off of this ISO that is downloaded from Omni. And what should happen here is very, very shortly, we should see these show up as machines in our machine list here. And you can imagine that you can have machines from anywhere where you can boot Talos Linux. So at TalosCon, we actually had a worldwide Kubernetes cluster that spanned the Netherlands, it spanned Israel, it spanned a bunch of places, just every continent in the world was probably hit. And that's kind of where Omni differs from other, is it allows you to create hybrid Kubernetes clusters as opposed to a hybrid way of managing Kubernetes clusters. And it's a fine line where a lot of products say, yeah, we can manage hybrid Kubernetes, but that's really just instances of a cluster that are within different clouds. This is truly a bring a machine from anywhere and create a cluster out of it.
Yep.
So it looks like these are the AWS ones, because I can see the host names updating. We'll try to use the host name, and you can see that these are tagged as well with EU Central 1A. Those are yours, T2 micros. So now that we have our Vultr ones connected in, These are metal on Vultr because it's an ISO. And then we have your one from the desk. So these checked in, you could tell we have all of them. So now from here, and of course we have ways to do this from a CLI as well. What I'll do is I'll just do the latest Talos. I'll do Kubernetes 1262. I'll make the ones in Vultr control plane nodes, and let's make the rest workers. Now, here's a key thing that's very, very important. What I'm going to do here is I am going to add what we call a config patch. And there's 3 places currently, and we plan on expanding this, where you can add a config patch. And this patch at the cluster level is going to apply to every single machine that comes into this cluster. So there's no need to manage this patch for every machine that ever comes online. This is just for this cluster, add this patch to it. Similarly, you can do things for the control planes and the worker nodes. And eventually there's going to be a way to do it for targeted nodes or a subgroup of nodes that you define somehow, maybe storage nodes. And what I'm enabling in this particular patch is a feature of Talos that we've had for over a year now, which is called kubespan. Kubespan is going to leverage WireGuard yet again to allow us to have these machines. Where are your machines actually running? Well, EU Central 1, but this one's yeah. So, these machines are based in Los Angeles and these are based in EU. They're obviously on different networks. Kubespan is going to allow the communication between the nodes to be seamless between the two using WireGuard. So I'm going to say create cluster, and you can see right now we got these events that are happening here, and there's an event stream within Talos Linux that we leverage within Omni. We can actually tell which stage Talos is in. If we go to one of these machines, the logs are being streamed over this WireGuard link. You can see that one of them is rebooting right now because we just finished an install. These are logs of Talos itself. So you can see the grub install is happening. The reboot is happening, which, by the way, we do with kexec to make it even faster on places like bare metal.
Right.
But this is spinning up at the moment.
Okay.
And we can actually try to see what's going on with your machines. And I'll pause if there's any questions.
So while that's spinning up, we'll give it a minute for things to come up and just talk a little bit about. There's a question: how do you implement GitOps in this? Is it an agent running entirely in the cloud, or does Talos have its own agent, or how do we GitOps?
Yeah, so
using this.
If you want to use Omni's the SaaS that we offer, you just go create your account, and then there is Omni CTL as well. You can download Omni CTL here, and that has ways to define this whole cluster that I just created could have been defined completely in YAML if I wanted to, and you could use Omni CTL to do that. And the beautiful thing about this is you don't need to worry about in as far as GitOps goes. You don't need to worry about storing any sensitive information. All of that information is encrypted and stored within etcd, which is our database on the back end of Omni. So that means that your GitOps can be completely secret free. You don't need to worry about all of that stuff, which is what you typically have to do with vanilla Talos, because when you get a configuration for vanilla Talos, it has the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. Did I answer I thought there was some more parts to that. Sorry.
Just that, how do we GitOps it, and is there any agents involved? But if it's a kind of a service,
yeah, no agents.
Yeah,
Talos is the agent.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Okay. And I'm guessing that if we would want to do similar to this without using Omni, it would be possible with some PXE boot type stuff for some custom ISOs, but Omni just makes it all easier and headache free.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is definitely doable, right? 95% of what we do is open source. Omni is the only thing that has been closed source so far, because as a company, we need to survive so that we can continue to build Talos. And you could build something like Omni. I mean,
as some of the people that we talked with in OmniCon a few days ago have done.
Yes, some people have done something very similar. It's not to the extent of Omni. And Omni just this demo is very simple, but a lot is going on under the hood.
Yeah.
Imagine building this all on top of SSH. Imagine doing this all without WireGuard.
Yeah.
You know, we got the right set of technologies to make this not just doable, but it's a technology that I think will thrive
Yeah.
and do extremely well and be rock solid and secure and all of the things that we want. You could have probably done something like this with more traditional Linux or whatever, but it
Yeah.
it would have been held together with gum and tape.
Yeah. One of the projects I'm working on, actually the one that your team helped me out with, we are automating having a Kubernetes cluster running on-prem in AWS and in Azure. And kind of you boot up, it gets its config, joins the cluster, uses kubespan in the background for the wire guard, and
Uh-huh.
we then just have a or a Kubernetes cluster spanning those 3 different data centers, and then we
Oh,
just
cool.
target that. Hey, I want this workload to run on nodes which are tagged
Right.
AWS or Azure, and it's great.
Right.
The thing about
Yeah.
Omni is, in my view, not that it's really adding any extra functionality. I mean, I'm sure there is little bits here and there, but the big thing is it's just making it easy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's convenient, right? You could just use it immediately. And if you're a
Yeah,
company that doesn't want to mess around with building this for a year, this just works. And
yeah,
we have people running this on premise. We have people running this in our SaaS. And so, there's ways to mix and match this as you see fit. Finally,
yeah,
we're seeing these ones come up. Um, but yeah, that's the gist of it. You can watch these logs and
yeah. And if I have thousands of Talos clusters on the edge, I would think thousands of Talos nodes on the edge, or even clusters. How would you manage a whole fleet?
yeah, that's a good question. So we actually have a customer. They gave a presentation at TalosCon, PowerFlex. What they're doing is they offer like EV charging stations, and within, let's say, a parking garage in downtown Mountain View, you have this little box that's running Talos Linux, and it's running a single node Kubernetes cluster. Thanks to WireGuard, they can reach out to those machines at any time. And in their case, each machine that you would see in this list ends up ultimately being a Kubernetes cluster. But in their cluster list, they would have multiple clusters here, and each one of them are a different site. And the pattern that they're using is using Argo CD to bootstrap their workloads on those machines. So Talos Linux boots up, and then we have this feature within Talos Linux. You can have a config patch that says, here's a inline set of manifests that I want you to deploy for me when Kubernetes is up. Talos Linux will deploy those. And in their case, we're deploying Argo CD, and then Argo CD is managing their applications from there.
Yep, I've used that in its so
Yeah, it's
or
a really cool pattern.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, of course, you know how demos go, live demos go. You may need to kick these machines and get them to reboot. But this one's coming up at least.
yeah.
The one
Mine's
on your
coming up.
desktop's coming up. Yep.
Yeah,
I think just maybe some internet. It's got to pull some stuff.
yeah. It's
But yeah,
taking
the control
from
plane's
here.
there.
Yep, yep. All right, but I'm gonna assume and hope that that demo kind of proved that this functionality is there despite a couple of hiccups, but a reboot would solve that, I'm sure, because I've done it. But then we've got a couple minutes or 5 minutes left, so let's take a look at the remaining questions that have come in.
Sure.
Uh, I tried Talos a few months ago. It looks really promising. Andrew and the team got the impression there's some sort of discovery service when the nodes are sent information. Is this mandatory? What about private clouds without connection to the discovery service?
Yeah, it's a good question. The short answer is that it's not required. There are ways to configure that. For on-premise, you can disable it. We also that code is open source, but that was one of our ways to also try to get revenue as a company, is that that portion is also licensed. That might be something we reconsider later. I'm not quite sure. But yes, the discovery service just allows Talos to do discovery of other machines before we can depend on Kubernetes. So it makes some of the APIs more fast. It makes Talos booting more fast, stuff like that. For what it's worth, I mean, it's completely encrypted. Whatever is sent to the thing, to the discovery service is an encrypted blob. Our service knows nothing about it. Only the Talos nodes with the same matching key can decrypt it.
Yeah. How special are those ISO files you firstly uploaded to vultr.com? Are they vanilla Talos, or is there any more inside?
Yeah, they are not very special, and this is something we want to get rid of, actually. All they are is vanilla Talos with some extra grub configuration options that teach it how and where to connect with Omni. So in theory, you could take down one of our GitHub assets, add those options into the grub config, and it would just work. It's the same exact thing. In fact, what we want to get to is, we just announced in TalosCon that we're going to move to a multi-doc YAML format for our configuration, which means in the future, you could supply in the user data, or just, you know, the apply config API to Talos, a YAML file that describes how to connect to Omni rather than depending on kernel args.
Yep. Cool.
So we'll get rid of that.
Yep. Can Omni interwork with a cloud provider specific Kubernetes like Azure's AWS or EKS?
Oh, that's a good question. The short answer is I don't know, but just thinking out loud here, Omni wants to manage things like, one of the things that I didn't mention about Omni is it actually provides an HA load balancing endpoint for Talos API and Kubernetes API. That's another feature of it. So I don't know how that would play with the clouds necessarily. And plus, can you run Talos Linux on EKS? I doubt you can, and it's going to want to manage the control plane. Yeah, so
I think it's kind of like I don't want to say a competing service, because it's looking at it differently, but it's not really a fair comparison. They're different things. Not really so much intermixing. Okay, there's 2 left, but we don't have much time. So, do you have a way to inject an extra certificate if you're going through some? Okay, good. And then the last one, I saved this one. How can I convince my seniors to use Talos for our next Kubernetes cluster in less than 3 minutes?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. That is great. I mean, just, ask them, do you want to manage the operating system? Do you want to manage Kubernetes? Do you want to do all of these things? And it may be fun to them, but at the end of the day, they don't want to be paged for silly things, right? They don't want to be paged for, the random things that just go away with Talos Linux. It improves reliability and stability, and it allows you to do the more funner SRE type things that I think people are going to be doing more and more, programming things and
All
not
right.
the greatest elevator pitch. I'm not a salesman.
But thanks a lot, Andrew. It's been great, as usual.
Hi, we're from Eficode, and we're delighted to organize the DevOps conference.
The interactive track at our conference has a unique opportunity for speakers and audience members to engage in dynamic conversations. It fostered a collaborative learning environment. Our tailored coaching services can also help you to overcome challenges in your software development life cycle. Let's have a chat.
Connect with us at Eficode.com, and let's push the boundaries of software development.